Yo, yo, yo. Good evening, everyone. James here, aka Medic, the Sound God. You can find me on YouTube, guys. Look me up. Give me a like. Today's December 29th. Another beautiful day off on vacation here, guys, and it's kind of a slow day in the news. Some things going on, but I thought, I think I'd take today and do something I've been wanting to do for a while, and kind of explain, why do I lean to the right? Why do I consider myself a conservative, and what is a conservative in my eyes? And how did I get there? How did somebody coming from the roots I came from, end up being uh, leaning the way I do, politically speaking? I mean, I've had people ask me, like, throughout all these years, like, why and how, and I'm gonna try and lead that into, how did I get to be a Trump supporter at some point at the end there, which is a completely different thing, it seems like, to being a conservative, of course, and being a Republican even. So I hope you guys will do me a favor and like my video here, give it a share, subscribe to my channel. If you could, please like this video on YouTube, not just on Facebook, if you could, because it helps the algorithm pick it up. If I don't, I get likes on Facebook and it doesn't, have the any bearance on YouTube. So it really helps if you can give it a like on YouTube and subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already. And if you have, I thank you. I thank you so much. Without trying to give you a life story here for me here, I'm going to try to explain, why do I lean the way I do, and how did I get here throughout all these years. It's been 15 to 20 years since 2001, pretty much, that I've been paying attention to politics and really caring, and just went on a huge life learning lesson since that time forward. And for anybody who knows me throughout all those years, I've always cared about these things, and looked into these things, and had weird sets of knowledge that most people my age didn't have, and didn't care about as much. So I think for all of us, we got to start where our roots are. I think for most of us, we're all a product of our surroundings, and um, we basically, I have this belief that we fall where we are, politically speaking, on based upon where how we grew up, and where we grew up, what information was given to us, at during very formidable times in our years, right? So with trying to save you from giving you my whole life story, I do think it is important to at least give some background on, what our roots are, whenever you have somebody that's gonna, try to follow what you're saying. They should know who you are, and what your upbringing was. Okay, so I was born to a father who had me very late in life, right? For those of you who don't know, I'm gonna start with that. My father got my mother pregnant with me at the age of 60 years old, right? My mother was only 20 at the time, right? So a big, huge age difference, and that story in and of itself is a whole nother thing. But an old Oklahoma cowboy dressing auctioneer, and a young Italian, Hungarian woman born in Brooklyn, New York, meet in El Paso, Texas somehow. And this man, impregnates this woman. And uh, and I shouldn't just say impregnates, because my father took over as a great father. It was one of the best fathers possible. And my dad was an old World War II veteran who flew, in the underbelly of bomber jets, shooting anti-aircraft machine guns at fighter jets flying around him, Nazis flying around him. Um, shooting down those type of fighter jets, and lived through it, except for being hard of hearing from all the machine gun firing. Made him very hard of hearing, kind of hard to communicate. You can imagine a teenager um, listening to hip hop music, growing up in the inner city, trying to communicate with an older man who is 74 years old as I'm 14, right? Um, but not let me not get ahead of myself. So my father had two daughters, from the World War II era, that are older than my mother, basically, right? Um, when my mom was 20 and had me, they were probably, in their 30s and 40s and whatnot. So, I remember as a young man, I mean, even at this point, I'm like a great, great, great uncle somehow. I don't even know how many greats I'd have to go because my sisters have kids who have kids who have kids. I'm their uncle, right? So that's pretty crazy. Grew up in El Paso, Texas. In a pretty stable household. I felt like, and had a good enough wealth basis to grow up in El Paso. And things changed drastically in the world of auctioneering in the state of Texas and in El Paso, where my dad had this great history of business, right? Well, we had to move it to Phoenix, Arizona, and we moved directly into the belly of the beast, into the inner city where I grew up. Um, you know, Around, let's just say, 28th Street and Indian School area, right in Phoenix, Arizona, and growing up in the public school system, as rotten as it is, thankfully, I don't have to have my son in that school system. We've been able to avoid and be smart about being able to keep him out of it. Man, I can't imagine what it must be like for you parents out there who have to deal with this school system that we have in place. Our daughter grew up in it. For those of you who don't know, I have a stepdaughter who I came into her life at 5 years old, and she's now 20, which is crazy. But I've been there. I'm basically her father, and she grew up in the public school system, and she's turned out not all that bad. So I mean that's okay, but I think it's a different time than it is now. So to be quick with that part, growing up in the public school system, you know, what were my politics at the time? Just no one cared, no one paid attention. All we just figured the system was rotten. I'm a child of the 90s, and I believe music has a lot to do with our culture and who we are, and um, I could say for me, coming up on listening to Wu Tang. For those of you who know me, I was called Wu Tang James at one time in high school. I remember. um, I was relegated to be, I was negated to be called Wu Tang James because everything on me, I was wearing Wu wear in 1994, right? So I was doing this very East Coast thing, living in the West Coast, and I started learning, a lot about Wu Tang and what they believe. There's so much about it that none of you guys would even probably know about when it comes to the 5%er stuff and that side of Wu Tang, and they had many sides to them, but that had a lot to do with my upbringing and my belief in politics. Right, that would be completely contrary to where I'm at now. You would say. Um, if you know who I am now with my politics and whatnot compared to where I was at then, well, in this day I would argue a lot of politics, with the RZA, let's say, who's much more intelligent than I am, you know, but I believe just even intelligent people can be misled and believe things that I believe are wrong. We can have disagreements when it comes to stuff like that. But I remember, my level of knowledge of politics at the time wasn't very high. I remember, speaking of the New World Order with Bill Clinton in power. I remember being in parks, ditching school, smoking joints with all the essays and stuff, talking about the New World Order and Bill Clinton being a part of it. Um, but, I had no idea between Democrat and conservative at the time. So I would say all that changed, the morning of 9/11. Um, the day that occurred, it had a huge impact on me. And I think me more so than the people around me, growing up the way we were growing up at the time, which I'll skip getting into, but most of you, we all understand what I mean by that. Um, the people around me, it didn't affect them as greatly as it did me, I have a feeling. I feel as if because of my love of country that I had in me, probably because of my father and his my knowledge of World War II and the history I learned from him. Um, and for some reason, I mean, even when I went to Valley Forge, I remember my mom drove me to New York one time, and on the way we got to stop at Valley Forge at 10 years old. And even at that time, the way I cared so much about where I was at, like the level of importance of what I felt where I was at that time, I think was odd for a child, for most. I don't think my son, if I took him there, would feel that level of importance that I did. Um, so 9/11 happens, and my love of country, I think, made me react in a much different way. Um, I remember that morning I had to go to work at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and this news woke me up early in the morning, and I kept glued to that TV watching the news from that point on, pretty much from that moment. Uh, Probably the first thing I turned on that day was Fox News. Let's say that was the first thing I happened to come across. I turned it to Fox News, and I'm not going to give this a big story about how 9/11, what where were you the day 9/11 happened, but I will say that the night before I was probably partying a lot. I got this phone call from my mother telling me to wake up and look at this TV, and I remember it was just like a daze and a dream being hung over. I was 19 at the time, going to be 20. Yeah, I was 19. Um, so I remember waking up and seeing this and thinking it was just a dream, and being glued to that TV all day. And from that point, feeling as if it wasn't going to stop, like it was just going to keep on coming, and our whole way of life, as the way we knew it, was all going to be different from then on out. I thought it was all going to change from then on out, which it did for a while there. I mean, for a lot of you who weren't there, who aren't old enough to know what it was like at that time, or for those of you who didn't pay attention much at that time, maybe took it in a different way than I did, but I took it in for sure, and I remember I worked for two Iranian dudes at the time at a cab company, right? And I went to work that day, which is freaking weird. And when I thought about it, I was like, no, you went to work that day. I remember you could have called off. Why you were so dedicated to work even at that age that you went into work that day on that day of all damn days and did my job, and I went home and I stayed up all night watching the news, from then on every single night watching the news. And I must have been, probably watching Fox News. And I feel like for a lot of us, honestly speaking, where you start with this journey of news and learning is probably where you're going to fall, which is a sad thing. But I'm self aware enough to understand and know that, you know, if you started by watching CNN all the time or MSNBC, you're going to be your brain formation is going to form in a way that makes you lean to the left. You're going to be hating Donald Trump. Let's say to get to this point today, you'd probably be a Donald Trump hater. If I had started there, I bet you I would have. Now, I would hope that I'm not gullible. I hope that I'm not saying that I'm gullible, and that's why I'm at this point. But from human to human here, I bet you that's where I would be if I had started there. But I started with Fox News, let's say, watching its news coverage, its news information. Then getting into 2003 and 2004 when the Iraq War started, and started moving in, and my support for going into war in Iraq, and truly believing that they had weapons of mass destruction, because it was verified by all the intelligence agencies around the world that they did. And I after the war was over, I said they ended up finding we found out they did have weapons of mass destruction. To tell you the truth, they had chemical weapons of mass destruction, which are classified as weapons of mass destruction, but that was not what we were led to believe going into that thing. So either we were very, very, very misled into going into war there for very, very bad means, or for very, very bad reasons, or we were misled as intelligence agencies around the world, which was a very good case that was put forth, that the intelligence agencies um, were misled by Saddam Hussein himself to bring us into war. Not purposely to bring us into war. He misled us to believe that he had weapons of mass destruction for all those years, so that he had that leverage, so he wouldn't be attacked. If you believe North Korea has weapons of mass destruction, you don't attack them as quickly as if you believe that they didn't, right? So that's obvious. So that's a good reason of why Saddam Hussein would have misled the intelligence community, into believing, giving out false signs all over the place that he had them. And I remember the stories and the information of all that he had them. Okay. So I defended this for all those years, and I stood up for that kind of stuff for all those years. And for my friends back then, I remember trying to explain to them why it is that we're going to war. The thing with the Afghanistan, not many people were arguing that at the time. It was like, that's something we need to do as retaliation, because the day George W. Bush stood up on that pile of ash and proclaimed that, the whole world will hear you soon, I cheered my ass off that day. And from that day on, I was like, I don't give a damn. Get out there and kill some, get them. I don't care who it is, get them. And no, that's an overstatement. I don't care who it is. I wasn't like that. I'm not some crazy, I don't care, go kill them all. No, that's not me. That's not who I am. But in a minor way, I did feel like, revenge time is here. We've been the nice guy for all these years. It's time to go out and kick some ass on some people. And Saddam Hussein is going to be one of those people. And we did it with such peaceful means, as peaceful as possible, handcuffing our soldiers in a way where they couldn't fight the war and end it. Well, the mission accomplished thing coming early with George W. Bush and all that stuff, that was a reason. Military operations were over, so you know he called mission accomplished because the takeover was over. Well, that was only the beginning of what happens in a region like that. And I come to learn over the years that you can't go into war like in a place like that, right? With hoping that they're going to embrace your ideals and your way of government. So I've definitely learned that over the years and understand that. I know and understand this now. And the stuff that happened into the Obama administration, um, when it comes to fighting terrorists, that was the number one thing that I supported when it came to him. Which you'd find people like Tim Pool and famous, prognosticators of this day and age, the liberals who have crossed over to be Trump supporters. They're very anti-war at any cause. So they support Donald Trump. Donald Trump believed going to war, even Afghanistan and Iraq, was a bad thing. And so he wouldn't be a Republican. He'd be a left-leaning person to our way of looking at left and right back then. So people that support Donald Trump that also voted for Barack Obama, but in the end became very pissed off at him because he didn't get us out of those endless wars, right? He actually perpetuated wars going forward. Once he won election, he took us into wars of regime change in Lebanon and then into Syria, helping for ISIS to flourish. and move into this big terrorist organization. And Barack Obama, I supported him with the way that, the one thing I was at the time supportive of, which Tim Pool or someone would disagree with, or Joe Rogan, with little bit of support they do have for Donald Trump. Their number one argument with Barack Obama was that, he had more drone strikes on people overseas than even George W. Bush did, and he was over there killing American citizens during all of this, and it's evil for the American government. Dude, I was cheering that kind of stuff on for I was afraid when Barack Obama was going to come in that he was going to be handing the country over to Islamic terrorists. Remember that whole thing? Well, the left hates him because he did not do that. Not only did he not do that, he continued the drone strikes, and he continued killing terrorists around the world, even American citizens who were going over there and trying to help Islamic extremism flourish. And yes, this is something that I'm very versed in, very well versed in. The history of it, even things of that nature, you'll find out I get very passionate when I start to talk about uh, the fight against Islamic extremism, which is now feeling like a very long time ago, a fight of the past, right? And it's still a threat, but I'll tell you right now, just to make a statement, since I just said that, I will tell you that uh, Islamic terrorist extremists, Osama bin Laden, overstepped their boundaries when they attacked on 9/11 because they knew they woke up a sleeping giant that would flush them out and kill them all, just like Japan did in Pearl Harbor. Okay. So the terrorists, even at the time, were very surprised around the world that this group of terrorists went ahead and did this, because that's the end of you when you do it. They always said, why don't you do little things along the way here and there, that aren't going to cause the huge reaction of awakening the beast? It should be more of about a propaganda war and an attack from within our system of the United States, correct? And you see Islamic hidden extremists doing that within our government, for the last 20, 30, 40 years. Okay, so that's been happening. That is a thing that I believe in. Um, but that's the normal way of speaking about 9/11, right? And even a lot of you may feel that 9/11 and what I'm speaking of is, it's not what happened. I'm not someone who even to this day falls for the not falls for the conspiracies, but I looked into them all. I remember in 2008 and 2009 really challenging myself and looking into whether or not it was possible that 9/11 was an inside job, or there's some conspiracy involved in 9/11, right? So I went down a deep hole at the beginning of digging rabbit holes on the internet. I was there at the forefront of all of that, I remember. And I remember I believe things, when I see evidence put in front of me, and then I give it a chance and I give it a try. So I remember giving a lot of that a try and believing some of it, and then all of a sudden, someone making a movie completely completely debunking all of that information that I just watched on another video that I believed for months. And then I watched a video that completely debunked all of that. So from that point on, I'm like, man, there's so much to this stuff. It's hard to know it all. And if you don't, then how are you going to make an opinion one way or the other? And there's still a lot of questions that you should obviously have about 9/11, weird coincidences and things that are impossible that occurred, and all those kind of things. But in the end, every intelligence agency around the world, once again, which we maybe shouldn't even freaking have any kind of trust in anymore, which that's always been a rock you could stand on. The intelligence agencies around the world believe this. Well, all of them believe that 9/11 occurred. The whole normal world believes that 9/11 was done at the hand of Al Qaeda and Osama bin Laden, which was admitted to by them multiple times and taking, credit for it and speaking on it, and multiple things, and the many conspiracies of missiles that took out the World Trade Center towers, and it not being planes, and those weren't real people. They were real people on those planes that day, right? But you know, I don't believe in the 9/11 conspiracies because it hasn't been proven to me in a way that couldn't be disproven. But also things like World Trade Center, Tower number 7, right? How do you explain these things? And I've heard it explained a long time ago, and I couldn't even hardly explain it because I would just be like, throw my hands up and be like, man, there's no way of knowing if these scientists are right, arguing with these people who are smart, arguing with those people who are smart, and but neither of them can come to an agreement. So who am I to get in the middle of this? I'm no physicist, right? I'm no physicist, but you know, after 9/11 occurred, I became a driver at one point. I became a wheelchair stretcher van driver, riding around picking up patients, taking them to hospital to the appointment, not emergency type of wheelchair and stretcher van driver, right? So I would have a lot of time to listen to radio, and I didn't know what to do at the time, never listened to any of this stuff. So I started trying to get into radio, right? And I really got into it a lot. I started listening to radio every single day, talk radio, whereas not music. I stopped listening to music. Now we're talking about at 21 years old, 22 years old, right? Excuse me. At 21, 22 years old, start listening to talk radio a lot. Talk radio has been a very important thing in the last 20 years of my life. Back then, Rush Limbaugh existed, since the 80s. Sean Hannity was just becoming famous on talk radio. Michael Savage, who was there, who happened to become like my mentor. And if you know who Michael Savage is, don't let your jaw hit the floor too much that I say he became my mentor, because um man, he was so intelligent, so good, taught me a lot, taught me so much. Matter of fact, his book was the first book I read, post going to school and stuff. His book was the first book I read, and it was called Liberalism is a Mental Disorder, right? By Michael Savage. It's a great read. You should read it sometime if you haven't already. And that goes to what I was speaking about with how we as a people we tend to gravitate towards that was the first book in my hand. So of course I was just, man, I was, as a 21-year-old, forming my opinions and things that all seemed right. And this dude's way smarter than I am, so it must be true. And a lot of it was. And so much of it was. Till to this day, I agree with all of it, most of it. But his tactics and who he became over the years, it kind of became distasteful to me and somebody I couldn't really follow. So I fell away from paying attention to the Michael Savages of the world, and I stopped listening to the Sean Hannitys of the world, which was weird because, man, I was spouting out Sean Hannity stuff in 2005 to my mom. You might know him from the last couple of years, your recent delving into politics and whatnot since Trump came around. But I've been doing this since then. In 2005, I remember with Sean Hannity, telling stuff to my mom at the time, trying to convince her of things that I had been learning. Well, you couldn't really pay me to watch or listen to Sean Hannity anymore these days, right? Not because I'm not a conservative anymore like he's supposed to be, but the way it went with Donald Trump and Sean Hannity not backing Ted Cruz was all a ratings ploy, and had financial reasons to it. And I believe it took our party in a way that didn't have to go in. With Ted Cruz, for another day, we'll get into that for another day. So benefits of talk radio. Um, some of the benefits of having of talk radio and learning by it. You get long form discussion, which was offered to me in a way that the cable news didn't do back then. I remember watching Fox News back then, and it didn't, short segments of little clips, not really teaching you anything, just hot takes, not really any knowledge or history or any nuance, nothing of the sort would be given to you. So I really gravitated towards talk radio. because of it, because you can get long conversation where they could take one topic and just break it down for as long as they wanted, hours at a time if they needed to, so they could really explain things to you in a way that the other news couldn't. So that's some of the positives, some of the upsides of talk radio. Over the years, I've realized there's some negatives to talk radio also. um it can be very misleading and very zombie like if you follow it too closely without having knowledge of truth and other things. If you don't make sure you check it in a way, you can definitely fall into some false information and people who can lead you down, because things can be presented to someone, especially a beginner learner who's just absolving it, pulling in information. Someone like that could be fooled into believing something very easily, right? And a lot of these guys are self-proclaimed entertainers who are giving you news and information with a sense of entertainment behind it, right? So they have to do things for entertainment to keep you engaged, to keep you watching. So I've learned that over the many, many years of paying attention to all this. So a lot of it I have to take a grain of salt with. But for the everyday worker, the everyday human being, you and I, it's hard for us to take in all this information on a daily basis of what's happening without having someone like that to break it down to us. I feel like, it's kind of hard to take in every day's full information in the history of in the context of every little issue that comes about without having someone to kind of speak it to you as I am now. Okay, so if you don't see the intelligence in that, then I'm sorry, I must be wrong. But a lot of people will tell you, no, you can't just, how do you get all you're getting your information from all these people? I do, but I also cross check it with the other side. I spend as much of it as time as I can trying to be devil's advocate and find the other side's belief in it. I've just come to the conclusion that the other side's belief in most of these things are wrong, and that's where I'm at. So that's where that started at with those type of teachers. Mark Levin was someone I listened to back then. Down the road, I ran into different political radio talk show hosts like Glenn Beck, who became a huge teacher of mine after Michael Savage, I would say, and Dennis Prager back then, and Hugh Hewitt, and Michael Medved, and Mark Levin, Patriot Network people. See, these people all had like contending gangs that they were in, right? The Patriot Network and the Glenn Becks and the Rush Limbaughs and the Sean Hannitys, they were all little, and now it's grown into where we're at now, right? But with technology brought the new age of how this all works now. I mean, Glenn Beck left Fox News all those years ago to start his own network, online only, which is a huge shocker to the news industry. It was crazy, crazy different that no one was expecting that he pulled off. So he went and started the Blaze Network, and it's online only. He doesn't have the huge corporate sponsors he has to worry about. He's subscription based so that you pay him, for your information. And that's how he's able to pay his huge staff that he's built up. Um, so I trust in somebody who doesn't have to hold to this, how CNN and Fox have to hold to their sponsors, their huge corporate sponsors. And keep their information, based on where they want it to be. Well, Glenn Beck went off and started his own thing. He was the first one to me that really went off and gave this a try and started it. Well, then that gave way to the Ben Shapiro's of the world, to be able to do what they do with the Daily Wire and starting their own little sets, their own little gangs within these things of information and people I follow. And I like them all, and they like each other and they don't try to fight each other, and they try to give you information and truth. Okay. Now they also have to entertain you. So I understand that. And that's one thing about that movie Social Dilemma that I love so much, was it was really eye opening to think, to make you realize to yourself, you know, not that I didn't have sense of self before this, but it really hammered it home, watching the Social Dilemma, which you should check out if you haven't already, on Netflix, I believe. Um, it really woke me up to the fact that, I could delve so deep into these rabbit holes that they could mislead me if I'm not careful. When you just obsess over these things all day and all night, every single day, listening to one person or another. What if that person next thing you know has you pulling up arms and walking down the street fighting against mankind, against your fellow man? Probably what I meant to say there, right? So I'm very cautious of all of that, and but still to this day, with what I can, I have one important friend who's very intelligent, who's a self-proclaimed socialist of all things. He'll probably tell you he's a communist, actually. Very intelligent man, way more knowledge of history than I do and the way things work. And I can still agree with him and believe he's wrong when it comes to what he believes in, when he with his social beliefs and his economic beliefs and things of that nature. But he would tell you that you should take your information and you need to read, and don't just take in people's the articles. Don't just read articles. Read the Do the footnotes only. Read footnotes. Footnotes to him is the most important thing in the world. I don't know how anybody ever, because the entertainment part of it, right? That's what keeps you glued. Because it's interesting to take it in the other way that you take it in. But to take in footnotes all day, is that going to keep you engaged long enough to really learn this information? Is the question. And how do you learn by footnotes? It would be a awesome thing to actually learn, because I think there is value in doing that and having the ability to say you did that in that manner, right? So nowadays, I take my information in, with the new technology that's there, with all that's there to offer to us. Joe Rogan and the people he has on is a huge way of learning. I listen to Glenn Beck's whole network on a daily basis. Ben Shapiro, I check out constantly, literally listening to 2 3 hour shows, right? Matter of fact, I subscribe to the Blaze Network so I can watch all of their content, and I do it live on a daily basis, watch their stuff, make sure I take it all in. Steve Deace is an amazing new commentator. All of you should check out Steve Deace, Deace, on the Blaze Network. Watch him on a daily basis. Jordan Peterson, Dave Rubin, you know, all these people that are considered part of the dark web, the Eric Weinsteins, the Brett Weinsteins of the world, who aren't conservatives, but they're part of the dark web. All these people I follow. Okay. What interested me through all those years? Well, you can see it in when the only time I spent in college, let's say, the only time I went to college, to community college, I got my GED from high school. I went to community college after 9/11 happened and wanted to get my life together. Well, the only courses besides all the regular curriculum that I took, the main courses I took were based around something to do with Islamic extremism, right? I took courses in world history, religion, American history, world religion. That was huge to me. And I took this domestic terrorist and international terrorism class. But mostly these history and world religion and stuff that was going to teach me in as to why Islamists hated us so much, why we were attacked on that day. So I wanted to learn as to why. Well, I did find out the whys behind it. That was my main focus, during those days. Um, Down the road, I started to learn about all the other political topics, tax policy, free market economics, social issues that were wrapped up in politics, gay rights and abortion and drug policies. All these beliefs in actual policy started forming around those days, right? And all those beliefs piled together, you have to kind of pick a side. Sooner or later, you got to pick a side of who forms their leadership around your beliefs, your belief system, and your principles. So sooner or later, you have to pick a side. Well, the Republicans felt more they were to the principles I had, right? So when people ask me all the time, why does it always have to be right or left? Why do you always speak in these terms, right or left? Well, back then and through all these times of learning all this stuff, it was a little bit easier. It was hard at the time, but it was a little bit easier to speak in terms of right and left, conservative and liberal, Republican and Democrat, which you would never hear me really talk back then about Republican or Democrat. I wouldn't say those terms. I would always say liberal or conservative. Well, those lines have been grade so much, and this whole Trumpism has taken over in such a way to where it's blurred those lines so much, where you have far leftists and far right agreeing in the middle on Trump, and people who are your traditional conservatives and traditional Democrats, going to the other side and fighting against Trump and not voting for him. So where do you fall in all that, right? Well, when I'm asked why is it that Republicans always do all good and Democrats are always doing the right, Democrats are always doing the wrong thing, Republicans are always doing the right thing to you, James. Why is it always left bad, right good? Well, it's not. Especially, I mean, it's not. I believe in more conservative values in most things, okay, but not in all. Obviously, if you know me, you know you'd be like, "Bullshit, James. I know who you are." Well, I believe in liberal things in a lot of others, in a lot of other parts of life. I also believe liberalism itself it is the destruction of America in the end. Okay, I do believe that, and I believe most people, if you understand the weight of what I'm saying there, would understand why. So people I meet on an everyday basis, my friends and whatnot, are not destroying America with their belief system. But in the end, the way the arguments go, between what I grew up with, those arguments, and where I'm at now, those arguments, this side wins. Where I'm at now wins every time. When it comes to abortion, this side wins every time in this argument. You can't beat someone who's well versed in abortion, um, wanting to outlaw abortion, being against abortion rights and whatnot. You can't beat someone in those arguments because they're right in the end. But I've never been someone who's stuck up, been an anti-abortion, fanatic, or had a huge feeling about it. But more and more, the older we get, the more and more you start to feel that way about abortion and some of these rights, right? What about on gay rights? Right? These are all big issues that could turn people against me, right? No, I'm someone who completely believes in the rights of gay people, and most conservatives do believe this. We're supposed to be out of government intervention. We're against governments even being in marriage in the first place. Why are governments have anything to do with us getting married? They shouldn't have any say in us getting married, right? It's supposed to be a free country. That's what conservatives believe. That's not what liberals are supposed to believe. That's not what Democrats are supposed to believe. They want a big government answer to everything. They want their hand in everything. Of course, you need a marriage license to get married. Well, conservatives don't believe that. We believe the government should keep their hand out of marriages. That's why you see a lot of conservatives, a lot of the younger conservative leaders of the day, and even the older ones starting to change their mind on this. But I'll make a point to you when it comes to gay rights right now. Conservatives are afraid of religious organizations being forced into honoring gay marriages and conducting marriages in the gay community, or being sued into the ground. So that was their concern. That's my concern. I don't want any religious organization to be forced to do anything, because it should be a free world. And I don't want gay people to not be able to have some sort of a marriage where it's legally recognized and they get all the same tax benefits and everything. And that's where most conservatives are these days, and you'll find. So please understand that. That's why conservatives, I mean, most of you on the left, gay right activists, how do you not understand Donald Trump was the first and only president to be elected running with a pro gay marriage platform? Did you not know that from all of CNN's reporting, that Donald Trump was the first person who ran for president saying he agreed with gay marriage? You might think to yourself, well, Barack Obama thought that too. No, Barack Obama was very anti-gay marriage as he ran for president. After he became president, he slowly switched over to that side, which was how he always believed in the first place, which is how leftists and Democrats handle all of this. You have to understand. That's how they handle all their beliefs and policies. They do not tell you what their real beliefs are and their principles are when they're unpopular. They slowly unravel them under the years and make you more and more comfortable with them. It's a complete Marxist tactic to use. You can't just hit us all at one time. That's the difference between Democrats and Democrat Socialists of America. One is willing to push it right now in your face. The other side is very slow to give it to you and wants to do it in a very long, drawn out manner, smart over time type of thing, where the AOCs of the world and the Elon Omars of the world and the Rashida Tlaibs want to push it in your face and hammer it in, and they want it right now. Only difference. So when it comes to the difference to left and right, you're supposed to support the one that more closely aligns to your principles and your belief system. And for me, over these years, it's been the Republican side or the right. Even though for many of those years I was a registered independent until I realized I couldn't even vote in who the say was of who the Republican or the Democrat representative was going to be in primary. So I decided to go ahead and register as a Republican from then on. So I don't blindly follow Republicans or the right and say everything they do is right and everything the left does is wrong, but I'm going to point out each side honestly as they do it. I can point out to you honestly the things that Donald Trump has done that I agree with. I can conversely point out the things that he's done that I do not agree with. Okay, but sometimes your values cross over to the other side and you have to be willing to say it when they do. It's just not many times lately that that's been happening because the left has gone so far left that there's not much I can agree with in the Democratic Party anymore. And I could explain to those things why. As any questions you may have, drop them on me, please. Please drop comments below. Give me any challenges you can that I could possibly answer for you to explain to you why I believe a certain way on a certain policy that I do. I can explain them well enough. So please throw them at me if you get a chance. A lot of these times, the left and the right, that you're supposed to have a clear distinction between the two, people cry out, why can't they just work together? You know, all this fighting, there's such, this side goes to their corner, this side goes to their corner, and they just fight each other. There's only two sides. That's what they're supposed to do. They're supposed to have a clear set of values that are opposite of the other, and the more that gets voted for on this side is the direction you go into. Common sense things in the middle should come across that they can vote on and agree on in the middle, but you should stand true to your sides. Now we all know you have to do things, capitulate to the other side to get anything done in this government. It's how much and where and what you do that becomes the problem. So to the point where we're at now, everyone used to cry about the two sides, just being babies crying in their corners fighting against each other for votes. That's what they're set up to do. That's what we're supposed to do. The right is supposed to feel like this, the left is supposed to feel like this. You're supposed to vote for the one that closer aligns to your beliefs. Okay, and sometimes, well, lately we've come to the conclusion, we find there's actually just one. They're all the same. They're all, and most of you would agree. You're probably yelling at me this whole time. They're all one of the same. In the background, they're all one of the same. The left and the right, Republicans and Democrats, they're all aimed for the same thing. They have this shadow government thing that we've always talked about when it came to who the puppet master, who's controlling things in the background. I've always been someone who's kind of scoffed at these things. And now we're starting to confirm and just have to accept the fact that there are these shadow governments that's basically the military and the CIA and the FBI who have always been there. They don't get voted in and out of office. They're just always there. And over all the years, they control certain things. And they take us into war in Syria and they keep us in war against the president's wishes in places like Syria. Um, they they do dirty tactics in Venezuela to help governments be overthrown and or keep governments in place in some examples, right? So Trump comes along and completely destroys all that in the middle of it. Trump comes along, and now that's why you find people like the rhinos, right? Do you know what rhinos are? Republicans in name only. Those are the rhinos, the Mitt Romneys of the world, who want the system in place still, and that's why you see him siding with the liberals. Okay, that's why all these who people I used to follow back in the day, conservatives I used to follow, at the people at the what was it at the Weekly Standard, the Bill Crystals of the world, those type of people who are now on the left. They agree with the left more so. You find them on MSNBC quicker than you will any conservative network, and they're very anti-Trump because they're pro shadow government, the swamp, as Trump supporters would call it, right? Which is a thing. We're finding out slowly it's a real thing. The swamp is a real thing, and he was attempting to drain that thing. He kept certain aspects of it in place to keep the government rolling. But damn, if he can't do this thing, if he can't untie that knot, nobody's going to. Ted Cruz wouldn't have done it. Ted Cruz would have been part of the system. That's why my belief in all of it has changed so much. Where I see where the system, where these conservatives, how this fight with this current budget fight that's occurring when it comes to stimulus relief and things of that nature. You see who the real swine is and who the real people are there to help, and there's not many of them. There's not many of them. So, with all that being said, in ignoring facts or defending sides like this is some sort of team game is what I hate most. I despise it. I can't stand this whole let's try to just hide our faces to the things that are against our side and completely expose the things that are for our side, okay? I'm totally against those things. So although in my short history of speaking my mind on the record, since I've been doing videos and whatnot, I've mostly agreed with one side since I've been doing this, and you'll see that. But it doesn't mean that I wouldn't completely expose my side if I didn't agree with it. The things that Donald Trump didn't agree with, I could completely would expose those things. Okay, the things that I disagree that he did probably wouldn't be the things that a lot of you disagreed with that he did. I'm going to disagree with the more liberal things that he did because a populist, he doesn't do conservative only type of things. He does conservative things, but he also does a lot of very leftist type of things too. So I don't agree with those type of things. And spending out the yazoo to send out checks to Pakistan for gender studies is not one of those things I agree with. But it's not necessarily him doing it. He tried to fight against it, try to veto it. He's being overran with veto, defeatable veto powers from the House of Representatives and things of that nature. So, admittedly, I am biased. I am biased in the way I present the news. So you have to take that part into account as you take this information in. You should always question everything you hear. As Glenn Beck always told me as I was listening to him all those years, do not believe me and do not take my word for granted. Go question everything I say. Go look into the things I say. Go read into the things I say and see if you can disprove me on any of them, please. And I challenge you to do the same thing. And I wish I could conjure up the same thoughts in your mind to challenge me and ask me questions on those things one day. I'm here to show there's a different type of conservative coming up, and the liberal culture is ceasing to be the cool culture any longer. I'm here to show you that this is all switching now. There's a huge change saying coming. There's a huge change coming in with what's all cool. Who's the cool party now, right? I don't know if it's gonna have to come in a different form because these Republicans aren't gonna conform. But there's a new this stupid Trumpism that's a come is creating a new gathering of people that are their own category, and they're gonna have to have their own party or something because this Republicanism is not working. It's not gonna work for it. Um, you know, as most of you know, most of my entertainment that I take in is more of a leftist. I would never want this world to be rid of all people on the left, because I believe this world needs all kinds and sorts to exist, to continue working. And I would never want you all to go away, right? Most form of entertainment and art that I enjoy and take in, I take are people on the left. I love house music. I love hip hop, sort of used to, but alternative rock music, things like that, are all things from the movie creators, producers, and directors are all on the left. I don't want them to not exist anymore. So I would never wish them away or anything bad upon them. I just hope to help teach them along the way. I just hope to help teach them along the way to come to my side a little bit, is all. I mean, they're losing comedy already. When the Dave Chappelles of the world are starting to revolt against you and see you for what you are, you're going to be in trouble. When you start to lose comedy left, okay, because of your cancel culture and things of that nature, what you're doing, you're eating yourselves when it comes to these things. People are going to start seeing that the right has something to offer, and it has nothing to do with racism that you're trying to lie to them about and things of that nature. So it's all going to come to fruition one day. It's all going to be shown into the light. We're becoming the party of the cool now, the young. There's people slowly over time being opened. Their eyes are being opened. Anyone who's intelligent and learns and looks into these things awakens sooner or later. That's why they talk about this red pill thing. Sooner or later, you're going to be red pilled. If you keep looking into things, you're going to be red pilled. Sooner or later, it's going to come. You hear people on the left as they have arguments. Okay, I have intelligent people on the left that can stand up for themselves and can make an argument. But the overwhelming majority of them, as you hear them in on video throughout all these riots and video recordings that have happened over the last few months, especially, but even before then, but during all this time, you hear the arguments of people on the right videotaping people on the left and recording them and trying to have decent conversation and debate with them. And their form of debate is pure hatred and vile and crap. They can't speak to anyone on any human level. All throughout all of these riots and protests and stuff, anytime you try to have a decent conversation with them, it's all just slander and being made fun of and bullying people. So as people awaken and they learn some of this stuff, I think they'll slowly start to come over to our side. And I just hope to expose a lot of this information so it can continue to get out there and bring some of these people over to our side. You know, I feel like I'm here to spread the word that conservatism is better than liberalism. I'm here for that. That's what I'm doing. So I'm trying to distribute that message to a community that I believe is being lied to by an evil left who only aims to continue to hold down the power they've held on to for the last 60 years. They need to control that leftist hold that they have on the inner city communities. They must maintain that power. And I don't say evil lightly, but I do mean it on a certain level at least. So when someone asks me, why is it always left or right? I hope I can prove it to you by my actions that I'm only interested in intellectually being honest to you and calling balls and strikes as much as possible. But just like with every other newscaster, reporter, commentator, I have my biases and leanings. No matter how much they want to lie to you, they have their biases and leanings. Jake Tapper is a huge leftist. No matter how much he tries to tell you, he's just giving you the everyday news. Okay. Sean Hannity is self-admittedly a conservative. He'll tell you that every night. That's why I respect the people that will tell you what they are, at least up front, and then you can take in their biases, you can take them into account. But the people on the left and the ABCs and the NBCs and the CBSs who try to act as if they're just giving you the news straight up and down without any bias, it's against humanity to even think they could even do that. So I'm all for us stating who we are, which way we lean. but I am all for being intellectually honest and calling balls and strikes. Okay? I want to say that out loud, unlike the media, who wants to hide it. And they have an agenda. So stop acting as if they don't. This helps you to better make a decision for yourself on the validity of my argument in the end, right? Hopefully you had fun along the way while listening, and you got something out of it either way, and I don't have to lie about who I am, and I can share the information that I want to share along the way, and I don't have to be judged negatively for it, and you just hopefully will enjoy it with me as we go. So how did I go from being a conservative who believes, in strict economic, my economic policy beliefs are very conservative and things of that nature. I'm very pro, free market, very small government. I believe in reducing the spending of government drastically. I believe in cutting government programs to do it. I believe in really tapping into where we have to do if to have any effect on the amount of money that we're spending as a government. Every single moment that I'm breathing right now, the amount of money that just flew out the door as I spoke just now, um, my belief of cutting that goes into, you have to cut Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, the ones that matter. Somehow we have to find a way to fix these programs. Okay. So if I go to run to be a politician in 10 years from now, this video is going to be there for everybody to expose, just like they did George Bush for trying to fix and save Social Security. I'm sure this will be used against me one day if I ever attempted to run for that government office. But hear me out when I say, if we don't focus on those big three social programs, nothing else we cut matters. The little bit of money we send to Pakistan for gender studies, the money that we're sending to China. Do you know that we're sending money to China for economic relief? Do you know where that money comes from that we send to China for economic relief in this latest bill that they just passed in the House that the Senate is probably going to vote down? I don't know. There's this money that we are sending to China for economic relief to give them a boost up is money we borrow from China. So we borrow money from China and send it back to China at a high interest rate and borrow it and have to pay them back for that over time. Tell me where that makes sense. It doesn't. But in any case, all those little dollar amounts that add up to nothing when it comes to how much we spend as a country, okay? When people talk about cutting all these programs, it doesn't matter unless they talk about changing Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. It's the only things that matter. You can't make a dent in how much we spend unless you do that. But Donald Trump is someone who's not going to do that, who didn't say anything about it, was never going to say anything about it, because it hurts your election chances with old people. Because if you say anything about the word Social Security, they completely think that you're trying to take away their Social Security and ruin their lives, and that's where they cut you off at the knees easily, right there, boom. And that's a huge Republican thing and conservative thing, was to change those things, where George Bush tried to change Social Security, and as soon as he did, they used it as a campaign tactic against him to show old people that he was trying to get rid of your security blanket. So this is where we go round and round with the government. This is where I've come to and how I've gotten to where I'm at. I'm a conservative with most things. Socially, I've always said I'm more liberal. That's starting to change over time, because I understand liberalism in the end really is the end game, the destruction of America. I mean, we could point out one topic after another. Let's say what they are. I'll explain to you why I say that. So I hope to engage a little conversation with this. I hope it wasn't too much of a world, a life history, but I think you got a good gauge on where I'm at now and how I got here.
So I thank you very much for joining me tonight on this second night of trying to do this on a daily basis. Again, I kind of ran out of things to talk about with the daily news, waiting to see where this COVID relief bill goes, if we're going to get $2,000, if we're going to print more money or borrow more money from China to send money to people who overwhelmingly majority of who haven't been affected by COVID, like myself, are going to take these checks and just, I guess use them to pay back the IRS. Crazy, right? People like me, I'm going to take this check. If I get this big check, we're going to use that to pay back our taxes that all of a sudden we owed that we didn't know about. So go ahead, government, send me some money so I can send it back to you and say we're even, we're straight, we're good. Thank you. Anyways, I hope you all stuck around for all that, and I thank you again. Have a great night, and we'll see you tomorrow on Wednesday.